Some places do not need to be destroyed to die. There was no explosion, no fire, no bodies left behind. Just a morning filled with footsteps, and an afternoon without any. In the middle of the sea, there is a small island. Once it was the most crowded place on Earth, measured not by land, but by how closely people lived together. Children were born there. Families laughed there. Lives unfolded within walls of concrete and steel. And then, everyone left. Not because of war, not because of nature's rage, not because of a disaster dramatic enough to make headlines. They packed their belongings, they closed their doors, and they never came back. Today, waves crash endlessly against cracked concrete walls. Balconies face the ocean with no one standing on them. Long corridors stretch into darkness, still shaped like homes, but emptied of life. The island is called Hashima, but it is no longer a place people live. It is a memory left behind, a community erased without noise. And this story does not begin with death. It begins with a place that was once called home. Before Hashima became a symbol of abandonment, it was something far more ordinary. It was a home. From a distance, the island looked unnatural, a slab of concrete rising straight out of the sea, with buildings stacked tightly together, as if there was no room left to breathe. But inside those walls, life found a way. Mornings began early. The sound of metal doors sliding open echoed through narrow hallways. Workers prepared for another descent underground, while children rubbed sleep from their eyes in small, crowded rooms. Apartments were tiny, rooms were shared, privacy was rare. Yet the island was never quiet. Laundry hung from balconies like flags of daily survival. Voices traveled easily through thin walls. Neighbors knew each other not by choice, but by proximity. There were schools on the island, classrooms filled with desks pushed close together. Children learned to write, to read, to dream, all while surrounded by concrete and ocean. There was a cinema, a hospital, small shops selling necessities. Hashima was not beautiful, but it was alive. Families adapted to the lack of space. They learned to live upward instead of outward. Children played on rooftops, their laughter carried away by sea wind. From those rooftops, the ocean was always visible, endless, unreachable. For many who lived there, Hashima was the only world they knew. They did not question its isolation. They did not question the walls, because beneath the island, deep below the sea, was the reason it existed at all. Coal. Men descended daily into darkness, down narrow shafts, into heat, dust, and danger. They worked long hours underground so life above ground could continue. When they returned, their faces were blackened, their bodies exhausted. But they returned home, to warm meals, to children waiting at doors, to rooms that, no matter how small, belonged to them. Hashima was built for efficiency, not comfort.
For productivity, not beauty.
Yet, within its rigid concrete frame, human routines softened the edges. Birthdays were celebrated, friendships formed, people fell in love. At its peak, more than 5,000 people lived on this tiny island. There was no room to escape each other, no room to disappear. Everyone was seen, everyone was known, and no one imagined that one day this crowded place would become completely empty. Because when something surrounds your entire life, you believe it will always be there. The buildings felt permanent, the routines felt unbreakable. No one imagined how quickly a home could stop being needed. Beneath the concrete apartments, beneath the classrooms and narrow kitchens, Beneath the laughter that echoed through hallways, there was another world, a darker one. Every day men descended into it. They walked through shafts so narrow their shoulders brushed against stone. They followed the sound of machinery into heat that never faded and air that never felt clean. This was the coal mine, the reason Hashima existed. The island did not rise from the sea because people wanted to live there. People lived there because the mine demanded it. Deep underground, time behaved differently. Hours stretched longer. Breaths became heavier. Sweat soaked into clothes and never truly dried. Light was artificial. Darkness was constant. The mine was dangerous. Collapses were not uncommon. Gas leaks were feared. Injuries were expected. Yet the work continued, not because it was safe, but because it was necessary. Coal powered a nation, and Hashima was one of the places where that power was extracted, quietly, relentlessly, without ceremony. When the men surfaced at the end of the day, their faces were dark with coal dust. Their eyes carried exhaustion that sleep could not erase. But above ground, life waited. Children ran through hallways. Meals were prepared in cramped kitchens. Radios played softly through thin walls. The island was divided vertically. Above, life, routine, family. Below, labor, pressure, survival. And the two worlds depended entirely on each other. No coal meant no island. No island meant no homes. Everyone understood this, even if no one spoke it aloud. Over time, however, the world beyond Hashima began to change. Japan was modernizing rapidly. Energy needs shifted. Coal was no longer king. Oil became cheaper, cleaner, more efficient. Slowly, quietly, the mine beneath Hashima began to lose its importance. There were no alarms, no sudden panic, just fewer reasons to keep going.
The routines above ground continued, but something had changed underneath them. Work slowed. Investment declined. Maintenance was postponed. The mine still existed, but its future no longer felt secure. And when a place exists for only one reason, losing that reason is not just economic. It is existential. Hashima had no second purpose, no farmland, no trade routes, no future beyond coal. The buildings still stood, families still lived their lives, but the foundation of the island, the reason it had risen from the sea, was beginning to disappear, and with it, the invisible promise that this place would always be home.
The end of Hashima did not arrive with chaos. There was no evacuation order shouted through loudspeakers, no sirens cutting through the air, no crowds running toward boats in fear. It ended quietly. In April 1974, the mine closed. That was all. A simple decision. A practical one. The coal was no longer needed, and suddenly, the island had no reason to exist. Families were informed, arrangements were made, transportation was organized. People packed their belongings. Not everything, only what they could carry. Furniture stayed behind. Curtains remained hanging. Shoes were left near doorways. Doors were closed. Locks were turned. One by one, boats carried people away from the island. There were no dramatic goodbyes, no time for nostalgia. Everyone assumed it was temporary, that they would return, that something would replace the mine. But they never did. Within a single day, Hashima was emptied. 5,000 lives removed from a space that had been overflowing just hours before. By nightfall, the lights were off. Corridors that had once echoed with footsteps fell silent. Classrooms became rooms without voices. Balconies faced the sea alone. The island did not collapse. It did not burn.
It simply stopped being lived in. Salt air crept into broken windows. Rainwater pooled on concrete floors. Wind moved freely through open hallways. Without people, the buildings began to decay faster than anyone expected. Metal rusted, walls cracked. Nature, slow, patient, began reclaiming what humans had forced into existence. Hashima became a place frozen in time, not preserved, abandoned. Years passed. The sea continued to strike the same walls. Storms battered the same facades. Seasons changed, but no one returned to witness them. What remained was not a ruin from disaster, but a ruin from absence. A city that had not been destroyed, only left behind. And perhaps that is what makes Hashima so unsettling.
It reminds us that places do not always die violently. Sometimes they are simply no longer needed. And when people leave all at once, silence can arrive faster than anyone is prepared for. After the last boat disappeared into the horizon, Hashima did not immediately feel dead. At first, it felt paused. The buildings still stood firm against the sea. Doors remained closed, not broken. Rooms looked as if someone might return at any moment. A cup left on a table. Shoes placed neatly near an entrance. Curtains still hanging by windows that no longer opened. The island was waiting. But no one came back. Days passed, then months, then years. Without human presence, the island began to change in subtle ways. Rainwater seeped into cracks in the concrete. Salt from the ocean settled on exposed steel. Rust spread slowly, silently, eating away at railings, doors, and staircases. Wind moved freely now. It traveled through hallways that were once too crowded to feel airflow. It whistled through broken windows, turning rooms into empty chambers of sound. Nature, patient and relentless, started reclaiming what humans had forced into existence. Not with forests or animals, but with decay. Walls crumbled, floors collapsed, ceilings fell inward. Hashima did not become green, it became hollow. The island stood like a skeleton made of concrete, exposed to storms with no one left to protect it. Typhoons struck without warning anyone to stay inside. Waves slammed against seawalls that were no longer maintained. Each storm removed a little more of what once felt permanent. Time did not preserve Hashima. It erased it. Years later, people began to look back. Not the former residents, but outsiders. Photographers, documentarians, curious visitors standing at a safe distance. They saw an abandoned island, a dramatic ruin, a symbol. But what they could not see were the routines that once filled those spaces. The sound of children running down corridors, the smell of meals cooking in small kitchens, the tired footsteps of workers returning from underground. All of that was gone. What remained was silence, heavy, complete, unforgiving. Hashima became a reminder of something uncomfortable, that progress does not always end with explosions, that communities can disappear without violence, that entire lives can be erased simply because they are no longer useful. The island was never destroyed. It was abandoned by necessity. And perhaps that is what makes it so haunting. Because nothing warns you when it happens. One day your home is essential, the next it is obsolete. One day a place is filled with voices, the next it echoes only with wind. Hashima stands in the sea not as a monument to disaster, but as evidence of how quietly things can end. No memorial, no closure, just concrete, water, and time. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear what used to be there. Not screams, not chaos, just life, slowly fading away.